Yes, thank you for that awesome intro. Hello, everybody. Mitcha here, lead designer, and I guess you would say the mind behind this mod. I am here, as promised, to discuss more about our game and our mod, um, IonShock, which is part of the Tiberian collection. I guess everybody's familiar with the first iteration, Warzone, which was basically the starting template of what we are working on here. With me today, I have my lovely co-host, moderator and beta tester, Rimtar.
Yep, that's me.
All right, and with our second host, Mr. Lysander, our secondary beta tester and one of the most uh, active members of our community.
I love it.
Right. All right. So, as promised for you guys, I have requested, I've asked you to submit your questions on what would you like to learn about the mod itself and where is this project going. What you're seeing now in the background, of course, is our beta build that's going to be accessible to everybody here on ModDB to download on the 20th of August, right amongst the anniversary of Tiberian Sun, a game we all do love. So, without further on, and mainly because I'm not too experienced in this, let's jump into our first questions, guys.
All right, our first question is: will there be a campaign? And if so, how many?
That is an excellent question, and one I guess everybody's been most looking forward to it. As a proof of concept, I do want to add a campaign to IonShock, though most it's gonna be it's gonna be based on like a template, like a proof of concept. So I guess you can say this is gonna be like a prologue to a very extensive campaign. We do plan on having a multiple campaign or a very complex narrative campaign, but that is for the third expansion called Ascension, something that's gonna be coming later after the release of IonShock.
All right. Next question is from Lysander himself. It is: will there be an add-on support for other potential modders? If there will be an add-on support, will it be done?
Well, that is an excellent question, an add-on support. I guess if we want to talk in an official manner, I will be more than happy to collaborate with other modders to include different gameplay and visual modification to the game. Of course, everybody has the option to add or change things about the mod at any time, but in a more official capacity, I am open to it.
All right. The next question is: will there be more new units besides the ones that have already been announced?
The unit roster is gonna vary depending on balance changes. We do have a lot of experience by releasing Warzone, and we took feedback from the community in regards mainly with the abundance of units and units with similar roles. So with IonShock, I do want to approach it in a more balanced type measure, in which, in order to explain, I want it to be more focused. Every unit needs to have a particular role, and more importantly, it needs to be balanced, fit into the game. This is more true to some factions rather than others. Case in point, the civilian faction, which is gonna be one of our more interesting factions, may include a lot of units that aren't, uh, you know, aren't so focused. They're focused more on fun than anything else. That's the best way I can put it.
All right. Will there be a regular style spy technology plan, as in stolen technology from factions?
Although the Yuris engine is gonna allow us to expand more than anything possible in Tiberian Sun, I do want to remain focused. Like I'm not gonna say that it's not a possibility, but currently we don't have any plans for it. Maybe in the future, if a specific unit or a specific faction calls for it, I would be more than happy to implement it. But that's gonna need a lot of planning.
The Civ faction actually may be a good option for that, but
Yeah, also the mutant faction, like we already, they're known for their hijacker, so what's more important, more interesting than a mutant hijacker that can hijack buildings and technology? It would certainly fit.
Yeah, good.
all right. For the next question, is there any plan to see units with unique and special mechanics?
Yes, we actually have some units that are very unique in the way that they function. Even in our previous installment, like Warzone, people even now can try the Shrieker, which is a very unique way, unique unit in its function. It's basically a sonic tank that is very anti-Tiberium. So the way that unit function can best illustrate how we are implementing uh, fun units in different ways. What I can say about IonShock is that we're gonna be expanding on that. That's for sure. Units are gonna have unique quirks to them, but I do have to be careful in this manner not to create gimmicky units or straight up broken units.
So we'll hopefully see some units that have like the GI from Vanilla Red Alert being able to deploy a sandbag fortification.
Mm, yes, that's not out of the picture, although it's not implemented yet. A unit capable of that is uh, not excluded. I mean, we all know that the Tick Tank already does that. So making an infantry unit that has this ability is not out of the realm of possibilities.
Great. Will IonShock mix files be protected?
Yes. Unfortunately, due to some concern, I would much rather have those files protected, and it's not mainly because of security concerns, but IonShock is made with the funding of certain people, and myself included. Most of the purchases of the units and skins in the games do come out of my pocket, and yeah, I would like to keep their exclusivity to IonShock.
So a follow up to that, would that not make add-on support more difficult without your direct approval?
No, the rules and the codes would be exposed, so adding your own units, add-ons, or visual will just mean you have to create a separate mix, and that is a higher value of the current one. So you would be able to add your specific units or details to the game and run it sideways with the current IonShock build.
All right. Are there any plans to port the vanilla Red Alert 2 maps made by Westwood, as well as some of the community-made maps, into the mod?
Yes, I mean, as you can see now, we're already playing on a official Westwood map, a Red Alert Westwood map, and the conversion process is very simple, as most of the items are basically just reskins of traditional Westwood graphics. As for integrating community, there will be certain maps integrated, certain maps are gonna be made from scratch, and of course everybody that has access, because this mod is gonna come with a map editor, anybody can add their own maps.
Will there be any Warzone maps implemented there?
Yeah, I mean, they will definitely be a little bit different from the original Tiberian Sun, but that comes with the new engine. But along the way, adding Warzone map isn't such a bad idea.
All right.
While we're in the realm of maps, not to cut off the next question entirely, but talking about maps makes me ask, will the map editor be updated to allow the community to build their own Warzone maps using Warzone assets?
Yes, the same. Comparing to Warzone, the IonShock map editor is gonna have all the items ready and simple to use. We had our great contributor Ayla now provide us with his own version of the map editor, and it has been fitted specially to our mod. The same tool I am using to create the map you see here is the same tool you will have access to make your own maps. There's not going to be any weird or funky secret process that is going to be known only to me. It's going to be, I'll try to make it as simple as the original map editor, let's say it like that.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Will the ini files? Well, that's kind of question asking the same question. Any plans to put Tiberian Sun and first Firestorm campaign into the mod? It will be awesome. So, question is, will there be Firestorm in the campaign?
Some units from Firestorm make a comeback into this universe. When it comes to the campaign, maybe along the line, I'm not gonna say there's no possibility to it, but I would much rather focus on a original campaign concept rather than just redoing the Tiberian Sun or the Firestorm campaign all over again. Like, I know the original Tiberian Sun and the Firestorm are fans' favorites, and don't get me wrong, I would love to play them, but that depends on if we can get a campaign editor, you know, a person that is intimately familiar with editing campaigns, making missions, and of course I would like first to just have the game finished. Then we can focus on additional stuff such as that.
All right, we got a hot question. Are you planning to put new soundtracks in?
Yes, we have our very own talented Kate, who's our sound engineer, and he has been working on some very spicy soundtracks like synthwave, uh, classic 80s style synth, techno, futuristic. We are gonna keep into the dark theme of the game, so actiony, more rock and roll type soundtracks that you are familiar with. Red Alert may not be included, but we may add some that are more upbeat, depending on the feel of the game. Because atmosphere is very important to us. Like number one, as I'm known for, I would like my visuals to be on point and the atmosphere to reflect that. That's our main concern.
So, a follow up on that, since you mentioned the more traditional Red Alert rock and roll themed music not really fitting in, does that indicate that you will remove the original Yuri's Revenge and Red Alert soundtracks and replace them with these new soundtracks?
Yes, we are doing a total conversion over here, and that means most assets from Yuri's Revenge are going to not be included in this mod. Sadly, the Tiberian universe and the Red Alert universe are, after all, separate universes.
Alright, thank you.
Okay.
Will Space Marines be added?
Ooh. Well, I guess that would be spoilers for the campaigns in the future. Well, that depends on what you mean by Space Marine, because some expectation may be changed.
Answer the question, damn it.
Well, one of the plans in the Ascension mod is to have levels that aren't on Earth. So any Marines that aren't on Earth would automatically become Space Marines.
Alright. So, we have a bit of an awkwardly worded question here, so I'm going to try to do my best.
Alright.
So, the graphic that was posted both here in the official server and in Mod Haven indicated and showed all of the different sub-factions, and the question is, there are going to be new sub-factions, or new factions and sub-factions. Which ones are new?
Oh, okay, this is an interesting one. So, as you can see, we already have the 5 most interesting, well, 4. Yeah, 4. Yes, 5 factions that are very known to you. Of course, you got the Nod and the GDI, which are essential. Then, in addition, we got the Firestorm Cabal and the classic Forgotten faction. Of course, these are new concepts, but they are going to be Warzone versions of those factions, so they got different type buildings, different mechanics. The newest addition, and one familiar with any CNC player, free player from the Tiberian Wars, are of course the screen, which were teased in the Tiberian Sun campaign. Here you can see all their units, you can use them, you can play as them. I believe them to be one of the most fun factions and diverse. In special editions, we're gonna have a civilian faction which would deal more with the corporate and human side of things, you know, your random people, and they're gonna play similar to the GLA from Generals. Now, when I say that, I don't mean it's a carbon copy of the GLA, because that would be weird. But many uh, forms of playing many items are gonna feel very familiar to a GLA player. Let's just keep it at that. And of course, every one of these factions comes with their very own units, style of gameplay, strengths, weaknesses. We're kind of trying to do a rock, paper, scissors type of balance. Now, when speaking about the Nod and the GDI, they're gonna have two extra sub factions, two for Nod and two for GDIs, that are gonna use multiple units from Warzone, which are gonna be specifically distributed amongst factions. For example, let's take Nod. Your basic Nod faction is gonna be very laser focused, very classic Nod, right? You got your um, beam cannons, you got your artillery, you got your avatars, right? You got your loyalists, you got your laser defense drone. The second one is gonna be the Black Hand. Now these are gonna be a very anti-unit faction, so anti-infantry. You got heavy flamers, you got tactics that are very upfront, very brutal, very hit and run. So compared to the normal Nod factions, they are gonna be less sneaky and more reliant on mass destruction. And the other faction, the Mark of Cain, are gonna be very utilitarian. So I'm talking gas grenades, I'm talking destructible mines, robots that cloak different parts, so they're gonna be sort of sneaky, sort of situational, and a very interesting combination between all three Nod factions are gonna play differently one from another, but they're gonna share some common units like your tanks, your basic infantry, your basic attack aircraft, and they're gonna have their own specialties. Now, comparing this to something like Cincy 3, I mean Cain's Trap, for example, where you have different sub-factions, it's gonna be similar to that, but I do want to diversify. In Warzone, we had multiple units for the single factions. I mean, if you play the Nod or the GTI, you just have an endless scrolling down of different units. Now, depending on the sub-faction, you'll be limited to a specific group of units that are very that are tied to that sub-faction.
All right, thank you.
All right. Another. This question is: will the only good bug is a dead bug still be true?
Yes, I mean, to be honest, in the release of this beta version, being a beta, and I don't take that word lightly. When I do refer that this is a beta, you're gonna see some bugs eventually. You're gonna see something that isn't supposed to be there. I am launching this in kind of an early access type, and I do want updates to occur frequently, as much as possible, and eventually we do get to a point that, like you said, every good bug is a dead bug. Yet I do have to emphasize this: Yuri's engine is kind of a new thing. I am playing around with both Ares, Phobos, and the newly dynamic patch. So there's a lot of elements that leads to interesting advantages, interesting mechanics that weren't possible with the original Yuri's build. But sadly, this will come with some drawbacks. We are learning, I am, with help from people like Alamau, who has been very helpful. Like you guys can see um, Rise of the East and how well he's doing with that project, and many talented coders that are lending their hand with Phobos. I am confident that we can actually reach a stage where it's stable, fun to play, and full with new um, features. Yet, I do emphasize this, I will require patience on that one. Don't be scared of bugs.
All right. So, will there be campaigns for each faction and/or sub-factions in IonShock?
Now this is really interesting. Um, IonShock is gonna be a prologue, as mentioned before, which, how do I put this? When I started thinking about designing the campaign structure. I did have the option to go on a basically pick your side and play that version of the campaign. But what I do want to try out is a more narrative structure in which you get to play different faction on different points relevant to the story. Like imagine every faction being their own character and the story that just jumps from point of view to point of view. 1 minute you're the GDI storming a base, the other minute you're the Nod evacuating, planning, plotting, moving the plot along. So we're gonna go in a structure like that. All right.
Question, which is a good question. Will there be custom narrator voices for each faction, like Evil or Cabal?
I would say yes. We do have plans for some. We have some talented people that have offered to do voice lines. Yet that's gonna come later along the road. I do plan on different voice lines and very faction specific gimmicks for those voices, like a very robotic Cabal, a very newly Eva. I don't think we're going to keep the original ones much more, depending on how the progress is. Look, if it was up to me, we would have everything, no? Like different voice lines, different styles of Eva, but I do have to be realistic. Can we do it? Yes. Is it feasible? Not at this point, but later on, if that makes sense.
I'm gonna actually ask a question for this one. What kind of voice will the screen have? Is it gonna be a girl, a boy?
Well, to be
Just
honest,
screaming?
when I was thinking about the screen and the Cabal, I wanted to experiment with something that's very artistically driven and very low effort budget wise. So since we don't have the capabilities of studios and stuff, we have to think outside the box. And one good example, and Lysander may know this, is actually the game from Warhammer called Mechanicus. They did it very well when introducing voice lines for the different court members. in which they did like a muffled, very robotic sound. And to be honest, it's super interesting to see it function. So I'm thinking we can add something similar to stuff like Cabal, edit the pitch, add some different synthwave for the screen, and have the sound very robotic and alien. Now, how would this work with stuff like warnings or your different prompts like insufficient funds, or you are being attacked, technology stole, stuff like that. That's gonna be more for our sound designer to think about, but I think we can implement like a translation bot. You hear the sound effect and there's like a low bot translating what the actual alien is telling you. So maybe that could be one of the options, or maybe we'll just have the normal EA style of a normal sounding person with a bunch of effects. Who knows? It's still up for debate, but I do want to make something like more creative with it and play around with it.
All right. Will we see navies for the different factions?
Yes, I believe except for Screen, everybody's gonna have a navy. Screen being a spacefaring race, I think it would be more natural for them to have flying ships rather than sailing ships.
So, would you be willing to share any concept ideas for GDI or NOD's navies at this time?
So the at this time I can tell you what the basic units are gonna be like. You're gonna have your basic attack boat, which is your light scout for water. This one's gonna be very strong against vehicles, but with poor armor. So very good for scouting, very good for gaining a bunch of them and ganging up on a ship or a structure too close to the land. Secondary, we're gonna have your basic destroyers. These are anti-ship ships, as the role of destroyers are. They're very good with anti-submarines, anti naval warfare, basically. So if you're getting absolutely crushed by different ship attacks, you would want to do it. And keep in mind, just small note, when I say destroyer, this is gonna be a category. Depending on the faction, you're gonna have a different type of ship. For example, Nod's destroyer is probably gonna be a submarine, while Cabal's destroyer is probably gonna be a dedicated mechazoid tentacle monster. Who knows? But it's more of a category concept than a specific type of ship. It's not gonna be Nod destroyer is a red ship, GDI destroyer is gonna be a gold ship, Mutants is gonna be a green ship, right? Now we have attack boats, destroyers, then we're gonna have cruisers that are mainly your anti-aircraft defense. So to protect your navy, maybe protect your base, you're gonna have to have a anti-aircraft dedicated ship. Like Red Alert players will notice this is gonna be basically the Aegis type ship, and depending on the factions, it's gonna different in the way it functions, it rolls, but their role would be an anti-aircraft dedicated ship. And then you're gonna have your battleship type ship. So for GDI, you're gonna have more of a classical battleship. For Nod, you're gonna have this ship that is basically a giant laser cannon. So imagine one of those stationary obelisks, but in ship form that moves.
Sounds interesting.
Will it be as powerful as an obelisk?
Yes, it's gonna be as powerful as a battleship. So for most of us, we are acquainted with the dreadnought and the boomer and the aircraft carrier from Red Alert, right? So imagine this, but faction specific. The same power, they are meant to destroy bases, destroy units. They're very capable, but very weak to anti-ship combat or aircraft in general. So it's gonna have their blind spots, but they're gonna be very devastating when they roll out.
So then, one more follow-up question before we move on to the next one. Will we see an epic Navy unit, or will that not be possible with balance?
Well, it depends. Like one GDI faction is gonna get the Mastodon, and I was playing with this concept idea, basically dividing hero-based units or epic units, as you say, that are gonna be different. For example, one idea is the Steel Talon is the only GDI that gets the Mammoth. The mutant faction gives a bunch of mutant heroes. Instead of an epic unit, you get multiples that are as powerful but weaker than an epic unit. Cabal gets the Defender Core, right? Everybody likes the Defender Core. Main GDI faction gets the AC-140 because, as everybody knows, that unit is kind of busted. So it would be nice to move it up to epic tier. And for the rest, who knows? Screen may get the Hexapod, and then we still have like 2 Nod factions. I mean, every Nod faction is gonna have an epic unit. So there is room for a naval-based epic unit, although it's gonna be hard for that specific faction to deal with having their epic unit be naval when they play on maps that don't have access to naval.
All right, moving to one next question. Where are the CVs? Is more accurate for civilians.
Yes, so I want to keep the civilians as secret as possible, mainly because, like I said, they are gimmick factions. They are made more for fun and just out of the box, and I do want people to experience them as fresh as possible.
All right. The next question: will there be Dune 2000 like spaceports for the GDI factions, but something more familiar like the dropship bay that was dropped from Tiberian Sun?
Now that's an interesting question, and I would say yes, as in this will be most likely a superpower type deal, like the drop pods in Tiberian Sun. We are all, so technically they're not a super weapon, but they're more of a special power.
Support power?
Support power, exactly. So in the same vein that the Americans get the power drop, one of the GDI faction is gonna get the drop bay building, and they will be able to basically order units and have them land anywhere on the map via dropship.
Now, by order units, is it going to be like the Dune 2000 spaceport where you get to pick what comes in the drop, or will it be a set drop unit?
Currently, I can only guarantee what we have in Warzone, as in you see an icon, you build it, and then you get to place it anywhere on the map. I can guarantee that. Although the new options we get with Ares does open up to different, including maybe the Doom 2000 style. Although I do need to do more research on that one, so at the moment, if I say yes, that's gonna be included, I might be setting up for a lie. So currently, let's just say we are thinking about it. How is it gonna be implemented? We need to find out down the road. If it's possible, I'll be more than happy to add it.
All right. Next question will be: will we see unique named characters for each faction?
Nickname characters like
mean-
Ghost and Umagon, right?
Yes.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so like I said, every faction is gonna have their epic unit. That's in the game, that's for sure. Now, depending on the faction, does mean you get different types of unique units. For example, the Forgotten faction, instead of getting one epic unit, you got a whole squad. You get Umagon, you get Hijacker, you get Ghost. That's 3 hero units combined to a total of 1 epic unit. Depending on the Cabal gets the Cyber Commando and the Defender Corps. Nod gets their own special epic unit, maybe a commando depending on the sub-factions. We do know that one of the GDI is getting the Mammoth, one of them is getting the AC-130 or the Cyberpunk equivalent. But McNeil is going to be added, and maybe some other hero units that are new with the story that's going to be added. So that's a long way to say yes.
Well, in the topic of uniquely named characters for each faction, in the campaign, can we expect, like, let's say a Titan that is, let's say, an experimental Titan that, for example, has a very powerful weapon and you have to protect it and test it in the mission?
That would depend on the way we're gonna set up the campaign. Currently, we do have bullet points, but we do not have a script. We do not have anything concrete set out. Like, we do have a general gist of what the lore is, where I want the story to go, how the events are gonna unfold, but a concrete this unit has been confirmed or that unit will be, I cannot say, because nothing is set in stone at this moment.
Okay.
All right. What kind of PvP and PvE balance can we expect to see?
Yes, balance is gonna be a more of a focus in this version of the game compared to the Warzone. Although in Warzone I did try my best to add a balance according to my play style. Although many players have confirmed that it was more or less hit or miss, and I do have to agree, some units, if not used, may create an imbalance. What I tried to do in this version, I want to build every faction with a standard unit that is available to any faction and may have a buff or two depending on the faction specific. For example, let's take the normal infantry unit. Both GDI and Nod have technically the weakest infantry unit because they're basically humans. that can hardly compete to cyborgs that Cabal has, uh, half regenerating mutants or basically aliens, right? And the corporation having CVs, it's even worse. But coming with those, they're gonna have strength, lower cost, faster build time, or stronger weapons. So even though your basic unit is gonna be weaker at the HP sense, it's gonna compensate in different ways. The way they use terrain, the way they function, but the gap isn't gonna be so vast. Like, for example, if you're stuck with only not infantry and you're playing against Cabal, there's nothing you can do. No, you just have to build more of them. And yeah, it might take 1, 2, or 3 infantry units to take down one cyborg, but the cyborg gets created much slower, it's bulkier, it's slower, your infantry can overwhelm them. So at the end of the day, it's going to depend on how you set up your uh, economy, how fast and smart you set up your build orders, and if you're a good player, you would always come on top. There's not going to be, oh, I'm going to pick the screen faction because they have the powerful boys.
All right.
All right. Next question. Are the doctrines going to change? As an example, not being guerrilla, using guerrilla tactics, while GDI being take a punch, give a punch. And what kind of doctrine are Scrin going to be focusing on? Civilians and Cabal.
Okay, so doctrines or faction specific playstyles. Depending on what you get, you're gonna have different. Like with GDI, we're gonna have your run-of-the-mill GDIs. Of course, this is gonna be common between all the GDIs. They're gonna focus more on armor and HP rather than mobility or sneaky surprises, stealth, or something like that. They're gonna be a straight up brute force. Now, the standard GDI is gonna be more air focused. This Steel Talon is gonna be more tanky mech focused, and Zocom is gonna be more technology focused. Now, when we're talking about this, think of it like this way. The Air Force GDI is gonna be jack of all trades but fast and hard hitting. Steel Talon is gonna be tanky and frontal sieges, and Zocom is gonna be beating late game technology superiority. When you come back to Nod, your basic Nod is gonna be very squishy glass cannon types, anti-tank, very mobile and very hard hitting units. Your Black Hand is gonna be more heavier and anti-infantry focused. And Mark of Cain is gonna be very situational and utilitarian. For example, let's say you got a random GDI base and they focus on air superiority. You can take Mark of Cain, put a bunch of invisible sentries with anti-aircraft around the map and basically ground every plane they produce and force them to come with their weaker units against the unknown. So very sneaky play, very utilitarian. A bit of a more of a high skill ceiling, but that may change. Depends. Currently nothing set on stone. When it comes to Cabal, they're gonna be a very vehicle focused, very anti-infantry focused faction. All of their units are very heavily armored, very independent of thought, very strong, but they're gonna be extremely weak against anti-tank and EMP style weaponry. Screen is gonna have their unique armors, their unique way of dealing resisting damage. So for example, Cabal being weak against anti-tank weaponry, and Forgotten being more infantry focused, so weak against anti-infantry type weaponry. Screen is different. Screen just have their own armor category. They're gonna be weak to their own specific units, and every faction is gonna have their anti-screen type weapon. Now, when it comes to the civilians, they're gonna be the wild card. Like, they can pump out weak rushing infantry. They're gonna have strange vehicles, very unconventional, very surprising. Like being the most, you can take them as being the most weak of them all, but a good player will have may come up with ingenious way of you exploiting their weaknesses to their advantage. So it's still a debate. Like currently I'm not telling you much because not much has been set in stone about the civilians. They're mainly still a work in progress. What I can tell you about the screen though is that every unit is going to be the opposite of what you expect. Let's take a classic Tiberian Sun example. Okay, you got your light infantry, all-purpose infantry, right? And you got your grenadier squad that are anti-building, anti-infantry squad. Well, screen, their basic infantry is anti-tank, and their shock troops are very anti-building, long-range anti-building. So all of a sudden they beat the conventional type of units. Then you have your buzzards, which are anti-infantry, but that's about it. They cannot do anything against armored vehicles. Then, for example, if you go to the classic GDI, they got the Wolverine, which is a heavy mech anti-infantry, and your basic Titan, which is your basic tank. You go to Nod, you got your basic buggy anti-infantry vehicle. The Tick tank is your tank. Now with screen, your light vehicle is an anti-tank vehicle, and your heavy vehicle is an anti-infantry vehicle, kind of flipping the roles around. So you may hit new players with different tactics that are totally unexpected. So I hope that gives you more of an idea of how the faction plays.
All right. So we've already asked about the story missions, and we've gotten the response of it's still very much on paper and on the drawing board. But we have a question here that's asking about things like co-op missions, mini-game style things, defenses, challenges, and base-on-base missions. Can we expect to see those?
Yes, they will be integrated into the skirmish lobbies based on map and selection. They're gonna be map specific. We do want to do something similar to, for example, StarCraft, not to bring the devil into this, but I do like StarCraft 2's approach to cooperative and game-specific maps. So, for example, in the skirmish lobby, I would like everybody to have an option to play standard skirmish, co-op missions, versus environment, tower defense, all of this stuff. So like separate section. Now, if we do have time after we complete the campaign, I would love to add like side stories, secret missions, and all of this. But this is time would tell, I would say. I cannot guarantee anything at this point because we are very uncertain with things. But if we get the time, if we get the options, I see no reason not to implement them.
All right.
All right. We have a very serious question over here. Is the cake still a lie?
The cake has always been a lie.
Always? From the very beginning?
Always.
All right.
All right. Will we see new super weapons?
Yes, every faction is gonna have their faction type weapons. I do not intend on just blatantly copying the CNC free or the red alert weapons. I do want to add my own spin to them. For example, one of my main goals, and I do hope I get to replicate this to its full value, the GDI ion cannon, I actually want to add the effects of the renegade ion cannon. So it's gonna start with the rain, with the buildup of atmosphere, and be extremely devastating to a point that when the map goes dark and it starts raining all over the place, every other than the GDI player, every other player is gonna be like, oh crap, now where is this gonna hit? Because someone's gonna get hit.
So you talked about unique super weapons, but we all know that GDI's signature and iconic super weapon is the ion cannon itself. So are we going to see variations on the ion cannon, or are we going to see the mainstream faction get the ion cannon and then the sub factions get different super weapons?
One of the faction is gonna get the ion cannon. For the rest, I do want to play around with variants of the ion cannon, maybe different for configuration. Like the ion cannon is modular, so depending on the faction specific strengths, you're gonna have a different type of ion cannon. For example, I do like with Nod, we're gonna have your Tiberian missile, your nuclear missile, and your incendiary devastating missile, depending on the Nod faction you're playing, just as an example.
All right. Rim, this one's for you.
I guess that was the last question.
No. Keyboard kind of broke. Will there be a unique support power for each faction?
Yes. It's still on the works, but most of the factions are gonna have a unique support weapon, either the MP, the Firestone generator, the support drops, drop ships, the drop pods. We do need drop pods, calling reinforcements, sneak attacks. We have so many plans, including a screen gateway that you can just open in random places and have people track out. For example, we are gonna repurpose the genetic mutator, everybody's fun support weapon, for the Cabal and just make a cyber conversion unit.
So you mentioned the EMP, and this actually popped in my mind regarding that. If that's going to be a support power, is it going to function the same way it does in Warzone, where it will disable the vehicle and deal damage as well?
Yes, yes. I mean, it would be a shame to just have your faction disable temporarily units while the other faction just warps in horrors into your base. I would believe that's a bit of disadvantage. So, although they're not gonna be straight up super weapons, they are gonna have their leveled damage, and based on feedback, we are gonna be able to tweak the numbers. So you're never gonna have like a game-ending EMP cannon that just deletes armies on it.
Alright, so our next question is, what is the civilian faction's end goal with getting involved? Especially since GDI represents civilians in the previous games.
Yes, so the civilian faction, like in terms of lore and how their motivations work, they represent basically two sides. One, the common people that don't always make it to the GDI transport ships, let's say, and two, the interest of other people that may not want to work within the government and follow the strict GDI rules. Let's say you're a interesting businessman, right? And you want to sell screen technology to the highest bidders. Well, you won't deal with GDI bureaucracy. You want to capture that for yourself. That's when you come with your private army. So think of the civilians as more of a third party that have their interest in gathering technologies and surviving.
Well, with that question, will the civilians cause actual trouble to GDI, as let's say spreading media that this is very bad for GDI itself?
In the campaign, of course, we do have the civilians have their roles, either by plotting, forming alliances, or dealing with their own uh, problems in their own backyards. Like one of the interesting missions from, I believe, Firestorm was when the mutants and the civilians started attacking each other, and GDI had to peacefully calm everybody by tranquilizing riot leaders, I believe. Which, by the way, Chad move. Those are some interesting way to handle riots. Just send in like a special ops team to take out the leaders. You know.
Yeah,
Black Ops.
arrest them.
Yeah. So we will have that, but let's keep that to speculation to a minimum. We'll see once the campaign uh, ideas start going.
GDI has never done anything wrong. No one can prove to me otherwise.
Yes, it's all brotherhood influence and propaganda.
It's kind of strange. Never had to deal with riots.
Yeah, because Nod killed anyone who rose up against them.
That's the point.
Alright. I think this next one's yours, Rim.
Yep, it is. Will there be a super unit that be constructed, called in, or built like a building? For example, the Kodiak or a global stratosphere carrier.
Yes, we do have, like I mentioned before, we do have plans for epic units. Now, what these units are gonna be exactly, we don't have them nailed down. But once we get into the campaign side of things, I don't see why I don't see if a cameo for the Kodiak that is controllable would be such a bad thing. So let's see. Let's see where it goes. They may not be like multiplayer appropriate units, but in the campaign we can have whatever we want.
That kind of interesting, like um, super buildings. Like you can build only one, perhaps like a defense or maybe something else. Perhaps you can only build one tech building
I
or
mean, the
one radar.
question talked about the Kodiak. How fun would that be? Being able to call it down anywhere on the battlefield, and it deploys as like a mini base, and you can tell vehicles and infantry that get built to deploy there when they come out.
Yeah, maybe like a mobile power plant that just deploys, and it cannot undeploy, of course, but it just deploys as a power plant.
Maybe, or maybe just be one of the GDI super weapons, as in you get to build only one and deploy it. It does massive damage, let's say. Again, I don't want to speculate too much, but I mean, the sky's the limit, to be honest. At the end of the day, sky's the limit. We can add whatever we want. We'll see.
Um,
Like
that's an idea.
several play test level later, and once people start screaming that this is unfair, maybe we'll make it just a campaign only unit.
All right, drum roll, please. We have the final question,
Oh,
which is: since GDI and NOD have a 25% chance to get an android infantry instead of a light or standard human being light infantry, will this apply to the mutants as well? Like, will we get the mutant soldier and then have a 25% chance to get the mutant sergeant?
okay, yeah, this is a great question. So when it comes to the light infantry, one of the benefits of the um, dynamic patch is that we can get different types of light infantry. Most of them are cosmetic, but yes, one of them is a Android version of the infantry. Acts just like the normal infantry, has the same gun. The only difference is that it's a bit stronger. Not that much. If your normal infantry dude has 100 health, the Android version has like double, for example. So it counts as two infantrymen. For the mutants, currently everything is cosmetic. So you do have different types of mutants coming out of the barracks. We might want to add a different type like the sergeant or a bit more powerful different weapons. Sure, that's an idea, but currently mutants already have the advantage of healing on Tiberium and not being hurt by Tiberium. So those are two already good combat advantages. I don't think adding on top of that a bonus 5% better unit would be fair. The only reason the GDI and not get this small buff in a way is because they do have the uh, weakest infantry. It gets hurt on Tiberium. It's lightly armored compared to your average screen, your average mutant, or your average cyborg. You are at a disadvantage.
So, as a small side note, minus the statistics that that chance to get a unique looking mutant, could this apply to the vehicles as well? Like, could we actually see different, chop shop variations of vehicles, or even for the other factions, like battle scarred ones? Some have flags or emblems on them.
Yes, absolutely. Like, this is not limited to just the infantry. We can add different types of vehicles in different stages. For some faction, we can add vehicles with different mounts, different turrets, different hull values. So if you want that chop shop experience, it's totally doable.
We have the technology.
We can build him.
We can do this.
Yes. There's still a slight chance I do have to make this side note. The dynamic patch is a great tool for this type of uh, dynamic, as the name says, gameplay and features, but it may come with a drawback, which is it will cause heavy desyncs, at least to what I was informed. So currently, if testing goes well and these things are just a rumor, that would be great. We'll be implementing all of those gameplay features. But if the reality is that this dynamic patcher does cause these things and will basically make any uh, multiplayer match unplayable, most likely we're gonna have two versions. One for the single player, in which you get all these wonderful features, and one standard multiplayer that's gonna be more of the classic Red Alert and Tiberian Sun experience.
Uh, would it not be possible to simply make it like a checkbox, like some of the smaller infantry in Warzone? Because I remember that the smaller infantry caused desyncs as well.
This is referred to coding. Like, sadly, I'm not too familiar with the process. We do have coders that implement these features. I just add them as they are offered to me. Um, Hopefully, by the time we get to a release of like a full finished release, there's gonna be all these small issues are gonna be solved in a way that you won't even notice. I would pretty much love to see that, but the way it's set up, I believe that this thing happens because one of the player may get a different unit compared to the other. So let's say there's a 25% chance of getting the cyborg, right? So you build one infantry, player one gets a standard infantry or one of the skins, and player two on their part, they see they got a cyborg. And automatically this thing happens because now you basically build one unit and got two different units depending on who's seeing the match, and the data does not align.
So, is the desync caused purely by the cosmetic side, or is it because I know the androids have they have different statistics over the regular infantry?
Well, currently, how is it implemented? It's I'm gonna spoil a bit of the magic. When you build your normal infantry in the queue, right? You're building a non-existing unit that has just a cost. And once you have that unit built, the game selects between a prerequisite list of units. So I've made 6 infantry that have their own skin, their own stats. The game selects between that list of six. It selects one, and that one unit comes out of the barracks. It's always random. Problem is, your system selects unit A, player 2 system selects unit B, automatic desync.
Sounds like it's going to be an interesting fix.
Yeah, so if this random mechanic gets built in such a way that when it picks one unit, it's the same for everyone, I think that's gonna be eventually the fix. Sadly, I am not a coder. I don't know how this thing works, and there's a slight possibility that what my explanation was just now was just utter horseshit that has nothing to do with the actual code behind it. Again, not a coder, might be different, but the way I rationalize it is that the random system works differently on the client. It's not server side, because this game sadly isn't um, server side. So when you build a match, you don't both log to a server, like let's say an EA server, and the EA server does the data and just sends the information to both computers. I think this is a more of a peer-to-peer. So player one's information gets sent to player two, player two's information gets sent to player one. System compare the two data. If they're aligned, it works. If not, desync.
So you are a coder after all.
You lie.
No, I'm just explaining basic network. Like, I'm sure if we get one of the actual coders in here, they're gonna say, but actually, this is how it works, and you're talking out of your ass.
That's going to be a fun conversation to read in the morning.
He just turns Gordon Ramsay at you. You fucking donkey.
Yeah, basically. So,
all right. Well, that was our final question, and we lost our beautiful co-host.
Oh, it's okay. I'm sure she's gonna be available for future endeavors, or maybe this is just a one-time deal, and you'll never get to hear me ever again. Who knows? Life is a beautiful thing.
Those programmers have already sent a hitman for your botched explanation.
I'm pretty sure Carbiter is writing his angry email somewhere. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for participating. I see the current game, the AI is losing its mind. I can see the Forgotten has over 80 harvesters that are stuck on one refinery. So working as intended, the screen is winning, and the other twos are doing normal stuff, I guess. So
GDI is arguing over a budget, and Nod is quibbling over the scriptures that Cain left them.
Exactly.
As things should be.
Hopefully this is not a one-time deal. If my co-host agree, maybe we'll have some more. Let's see how everybody reacts. Please leave your comment down below. What do the YouTubers say usually? Like and subscribe. Yeah, you know. Not much of a YouTuber, so
if we do something like this again, please join the official Tiberian War Discord server so that you can participate and leave your questions in the QA channels that we will use for future podcasts, if that's done.
Yes, I am going to add links to all the mod, the social medias, and Discord. Basically, that's our main hub currently, where you can join us, see what interesting things we have to offer, more or less. And yes, if you're a fan and you would like to take part in this and you would like to hear more, please leave a comment. Tell us what you think, what we can improve. If you want to hear more of this, maybe you would like to see a full-on podcast. Who knows? The sky's the limit, right, guys?
Mercia also has a Patreon.
Yes.
Indeed.
But
If-
we'll leave the shilling for the description down below. The Patreon currently, I would just say it's for supporters. It's not a necessary thing. You don't get any benefits, sadly, due to the way EA's agreement goes. I am
Yeah.
allowed to mod and use work within this universe, but I'm not allowed to monetize it. So I cannot say, hey guys, join the Patreon and get exclusive X, Y, and Z. If you want to donate because you like what I am doing, what the wonderful people here in our development are doing, you can lend us a couple of bucks. But this is not a requirement. It's up to you. Anything is welcomed, and all the money generated by this Patreon goes back into the mod. I'm not, living off it. So you're not gonna see me in Bahamas drinking lattes from Warzone money.
At least he isn't.
Yeah. Who knows?
Notice
maybe
he said nothing about the rest of us.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's all about him.
you guys are free to do whatever you want. Hey, I watched
Yeah.
this Beefing Brit. You gotta surround yourself with unpaid interns and then exploit the hell out of them.
All right,
Yeah,
well,
I think
thank
so.
you for joining us.
Yes. Thank you for joining us. Please leave your comment down below or wherever this video is posted. Might never see the light of day, who knows. But please, if you like what you saw here, what you heard here, you would like to hear more from my horrible voice and my lovely
mine.
co-host, tell us. And if the reception is there, I am up for building a podcast. I am up for doing more videos. Maybe go around between my modding procedures. Maybe showing off different products. Who knows? Different concepts.
Talking about other mods. Who knows?
Exactly. So,
Well,
thank you
that's
for
exactly
joining
what
us.
we need.
I'll catch you guys later in the next one.
I'll see you in the
Check out-
field, Commander.
Yeah. Check out the mod. See ya.
Until then, I'll be crusading.
Yes.